Welcome to the first episode in the series on economic growth. Today we're going to be talking about what economic growth is in general and then how entrepreneurship plays a role in a country's economic growth. So economic growth in a country is measured by the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, in 1 year. It measures only what has been produced within the country in that specific year. So this doesn't include products that we bring in from other countries that are imported. So it's only goods produced in America, not the products that you buy at the store that say made in China. It is much better for the economy of a country to produce its own goods and services. This increases the country's GDP. Measuring the GDP each year can compare one country's economy to another, can help us check a country's economic progress over time, and it shows if the economy is growing or not. So, a country's GDP wants to grow each year and be better than its last year's so that they're growing and economically speaking. So, the first thing we're going to look at is GDP a little bit closer. So, GDP is the total value of all the goods and services produced in the country in 1 year. It measures how rich or poor a country is. It shows the country's economy is getting better or worse, and the raising of a GDP of a country can improve the country's standard of living. So there are four factors of production that influence the economic growth within a country and its GDP. The first one is the natural resources available within the country, then the investment of human capital, the investment of capital goods, and entrepreneurship. And we'll have an episode on each one of these topics to learn more about them. The presence or absence of these four factors determines the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, for the year. So that's what we talked about earlier. Now let's look specifically into how entrepreneurship affects GDP. Entrepreneurship. So an entrepreneur is someone that provides the money to start and operate a business or a company. And so some famous entrepreneurs that you might be familiar are Steve Jobs, who launched Apple. And so he came with the idea for a simple product such as the Mac computer, the Apple computer, and that's grown into having all these Apple products that are in people's pockets each day. Then these people risk their own money, their time, their ideas because they believe their business idea will make a profit. Another famous entrepreneur is Walt Disney. He started with the business idea of Mickey Mouse, and now with his plans, his own money, his time, that's expanded into a whole big concept of Disney World, Disney Production Company, and it's grown. So these people bring together natural, human, and capital resources to produce foods or services to be provided by their business. So they weave together all the parts of economic growth and bind them together. So these are the people that are propelling GDP and economic growth. Entrepreneurs have two characteristics that make them different from the rest of the labor force. The first one is they're innovative. They have creative ideas. So Walt Disney had the creative idea of Mickey Mouse. No one had ever come up with that idea before. And because he was a risk taker, and he used his limited amount of resources in an innovative way in hopes that people would buy the product, the company grew. So just like Steve Jobs, he had this idea that no one had thought of before, and he took the risk. It wasn't always an easy task, and he used his limited amount of resources, and then his product grew, and his company grew. So it can be several different things, such as starting your own business, inventing something new, so Steve Jobs did both of those, or changing the way something has been previously done so that it works better. So those are all ideas of entrepreneurship. How this affects economic growth. Entrepreneurship creates jobs and lessens unemployment, so it generates more people having the ability to work, which helps the country's GDP. It encourages people to take risk, and in doing so, they've created better healthcare, education, and welfare programs. So each time someone takes a risk and does something that hasn't been done before, we take one step further as a country and open up doors for other people. The more entrepreneurs a country has, the higher the country's GDP will be.